For the hundreds of thousands of years of our existence, even before we were anatomically modern, humans have been what's known as cooperative breeders. Human infants have developed the ability to engage many adults into caring for them, and human mothers have relied on the extensive shared support and care of their offspring by alloparents, aka other members of their social groups. That is how we've been so successful as a species. And we're not alone. Wolves, elephants, lions, corvids, and mice have all been quite successful at leaving Africa and spreading across the globe thanks to cooperative breeding.
The saying, "it takes a village," is not just a saying. It literally takes a village to raise kids. The biggest conclusion I've come to after all of this research and this, I don't even know how long this video essay ended up being. I know it's not just one part, I'm sure it's multiple parts. The conclusion I've come to is that we have to rethink family. We've got to deprogram from capitalist family structures. "It takes a village" means exactly that. It's an old saying that explains it takes collectivism to raise children and not traumatize them.
Unfortunately, it seems we've lost a great extent of this flexible nurturing arrangement in our modern industrial capitalist world. The invention, accumulation, and hoarding of private property has shifted emphasis upon competition, and the consequences have been rather dire. Sure, there are neighborhoods and households and cultures where elements of cooperative breeding are still present, but the atomization of our present capitalist system has quite thoroughly kept us from reaching the full potential of our cooperative nature. Today, the dominant model places the burden of childcare squarely on the shoulders of the parents, who are stretched thin and run ragged by demands they are not equipped to handle alone. We now observe that children raised without extensive social contact display disorganized attachment, poor empathy, and poor cooperative skills, and when they grow up, the cycle repeats itself, entrenching us deeper into this asocial order. We can actually trace part of this shift away from cooperative breeding towards these more isolated arrangements much further back than just the rise of private property and capitalism in the past few centuries. In fact, it was the emergence of patriarchy that would set the stage for many of the systems of domination we see today. As Lerner argues, women have historically played a large role in the systemic subjugation of women, whether for self-preservation, to receive the benefits of class and more modernly race, or for other reasons. The prototype of the state, as the Kurdish Mario Abdullah Öcalan points out in Liberating Life, is the patriarchal family. In fact, he goes so far as to describe the family in this social context as man's small state. The patriarchal family, as an institution, is so powerful because it works so well to reinforce state power. Power is invested in the male head, women's unlimited and unpaid labor is secured, children are raised to supply the population, the example of women's servitude serves as a foundation and justification for other forms of slavery and oppression, and the oppressive ideology is reproduced in the next generation. That is why it is so sanctified. The elite need the patriarchal family and the labor it freely provides in order to maintain their stranglehold on the world. The structural power of the state can only exist as long as there are similar structures of power that mimic its values, proliferating through other social relations. Some people don't even mind if a boot is on their neck, as long as they get to put a boot on other people's necks.
St. Andreism did a great video not too long ago, literally called Rethinking Family. I'm probably going to show some clips here, but please go watch the whole video. It breaks down the creation of the nuclear family and how it was based and created around capitalism, which is something I previously went over in this video, that the current nuclear family structure is meant to reinforce the capitalist control of the state.
In 1800, 90% of American families were corporate families. During this time, colonizers worked overtime to separate native families, settling their children in residential schools across the country, while slave owners worked tirelessly to break apart African families, making the black family structurally impossible to maintain. Attempts to practice traditional kinship arrangements or forge new meanings of community had to confront the precariousness, lack of autonomy, suppression of agency, and gratuitous violence determined by the structures of white supremacy and colonialism. The fragmentation and destruction of families remains one of the key strategies of imperialists the world over. And it's obvious why. Extended families are resilient, far more resilient than a nuclear family.
There were a few things, though, that I wanted to add to what St. Andrewism said in his video. These are the key points that I think are the most important to start reprogramming the way that we think about children. I mentioned previously about how we talk about our children is very much in an ownership way. It's very much in a slave-master dynamic, very authoritarian dynamic.
The situation of the family in post-Fordist capitalism is contradictory in precisely the way that traditional Marxism expected. Capitalism requires the family as an essential means of reproducing and caring for labor, as a salve for the psychic wounds inflicted by chaotic social economic conditions, even as it undermines it, denying parents time with children, putting intolerable stress on couples as they become the exclusive source of effective consolation for each other.
And that's definitely an aspect that we have to get rid of in all aspects of society if we want to get to liberation as a human species. We have to start making the conscious decision to not program our children, to get our children out of the capitalist system, out of schooling, out of anything that is going to program them into capitalism while still keeping them in a collectivist community with like-minded people and children their age so they can develop and grow. I'm still kind of doing some research and philosophizing and making some connections, so I'll probably do another video on family breaking this down in more detail, but here are some of the things that I've come up with so far that we need to start talking about. Researching this concept around family actually really came to the forefront of my thought when I thought about how we treat people with autism and people with disabilities. Particularly for what I'm talking about right now, I'm going to use the example of autism and just kind of thinking about the structures and systems that we force kids into. If kids that do not have autism are struggling and still suffering from the trauma of even what we call a healthy childhood in capitalism, how badly are the kids suffering that do have autism? We don't have a good track record as a country of treating people with disabilities, particularly people with autism, with any sort of humanity. So as I was thinking about this topic, I was going, well, in a collectivist society, that kid with autism would just be able to explore all day. There would be community members around everywhere, so they would have help no matter where they needed it. If they wanted to turn a light on and off 85 times, they could, because we could have a space where that wouldn't affect anyone else's environment. If they wanted to run through the field and pick and whatever their brain wanted to do, maybe that's what their brain's supposed to do. And maybe as a society, we have actually stunted our own progress, our own ability to see what our brains really can come up with to make our lives easier, because we have disvalued certain demographics and intersections of people in our society. And that makes me sad. Seriously, it really does make me sad. I've bawled my eyes out multiple times through this research, and I figure I will probably continue to have moments of deep emotion as I go through the process of trying to figure out how we can get to revolution. So I want to talk about 4 words in particular: consent, autonomy, authority, and hierarchy. We need to understand these concepts deeply as adults. This isn't just about parenting or child rearing. So consent. Consent is a big one that we really do need to understand, particularly consent and authority and the relationship between the two. But just when it comes to consent, as someone who has been teaching on consent within the kink space for the last 5 years, I noticed years ago that collectively what we call the vanilla aspect of society, which are people who are not kinky or don't practice the kinky lifestyle, don't really understand consent. And within the kink lifestyle, we are trying to understand and practice consent on a more intersectional, more trauma-informed, and in-depth way where we practice it in every aspect of our life, not just when we are consenting to a kink scene. And this is something that is incredibly valuable and needs to start being taught and educated on within revolutionary movements. And that means you guys are going to have to get used to coming to sex workers who have been teaching about this and practicing these things for a long time. The current capitalist nuclear family structure does not allow for children to learn proper consent. And I encourage you, if you have children and you are watching this video, to start practicing asking for consent to touch your child, to go into deep conversations or serious conversations with your child. Start practicing that, because when children become adults and we are wondering why they didn't navigate certain situations differently, unfortunately it's because as parents, we didn't give them the tools they need to do that. And it's really the same thing when it comes to autonomy as well. We say that our kids have autonomy, but they don't. Our kids in nuclear families live in an authoritarian, patriarchal household and don't have much autonomy. And if right now you find yourself going, what? Kids shouldn't have the right to self-govern? They're kids. I would suggest you go read some literature and fiction and in nonfiction. There's one called Lord of the Flies. Kids can absolutely govern themselves. Historically, we have different situations where kids have done this, so I think kids could probably be a great asset and maybe bring some perspectives that we don't think of when we are trying to build our collectivist society, and they should be a part of that conversation. As well as the fact that it's interesting that we don't give kids any autonomy and we don't teach kids about consent as a child, but we absolutely expect them to understand how to do it once they're an adult. Even now, we talk about autonomy all the time, and adults are still struggling to have their own autonomy, and it's because we weren't raised in an environment where we could have our own autonomy. So when it comes to authority, I mean, this one's pretty simple. No authority without consent. Oh, there we're going back to consent. I challenge people to start going through their life and figuring out how many authoritarian figures that you actually have in your life. Like your boss, your parents, partners, sometimes a narcissist, and reevaluate. Did I consent to that authority? Do I still consent to that authority? Because consent can be revoked at any time. At any time. It is vital for revolution and for, I don't know, the existence of the human species in the next 20 to 30 years that we understand how to revoke consent to authority. It's real easy. We can all practice it now. If there's an authoritarian figure telling you to do something and you no longer want to consent, you just don't follow them anymore. It's a great thing. It's a great, amazing thing. You can just stop following them. And when it comes to hierarchies, it's very similar. No hierarchies without consent, right? Authority and hierarchies are intersect, and both of them are never good when they're not consented to. Again, as someone who is a femdom and who practices kink in her everyday lifestyle with my fiance, I understand what authority looks like with consent. He gives me authority with consent, and part of that is trusting the person that you gave that authority to know when they don't know shit, right? Part of trusting a leader as a follower, as a submissive, is understanding and trusting that that leader knows when they don't know shit and when they need to delegate and let other people make the decision who are wiser about the topic. Kids are supposed to spend their childhood exploring and asking questions, experiencing the world and figuring out why and how and what. And I think back to a lot of situations I've had with kids, babysitting, being around kids, even as I was a kid, and I remember how many times that parents shut us down from asking questions. I think most people have had an experience with a kid that goes, why? 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 And unfortunately, as adults, most of the time we get frustrated and we want the kid to shut the fuck up. But here's the crazy thing. If you were in a collectivist society, one, that kid would be able to ask why to, 45 different people. Also, why is that kid asking why? because he's a kid that doesn't know shit. And all these things that he's never seen before are happening all the time. And we as adults are supposed to impart that knowledge onto the kids, answer their questions patiently so that they understand the world, so they become good adults, so they become a good part and a good member of the collectivist community.
The Mbuti or an egalitarian, immediate return gatherer hunter society living in the Ituri forest of Central Africa. They're not all the same height, they don't all have the same skills, and they don't all do the same thing. They're egalitarian in the sense of equal distribution of decision-making power in a community, regardless of gender or age. They have a very lenient division of labor that often manifests as different functions of the same activity, with folks working together to care for children or collect food. Aside from their words for mother and father, they use non-gendered familial labels and pronouns. And even when they form exclusive partnerships for rearing children, their marriages do not prohibit extramarital sex or love. As I mentioned in part 1, the societies that have managed to stave off the development of patriarchy have been those who specifically organized to prevent it. So gender-leveling rituals are practiced by the Mbuti to ease tensions and resist such developments. For example, they engage in a game of tug-of-war where, when either side of the gender battle is winning, a member of the other side would switch genders in order to maintain the equilibrium. Gender fluidity has been observed in other cultures as well. The Mbuti stave off the development of gerontocracy through the symbiosis of their 5 recognized age groups: infants, children, youths, adults, and elderly. Each age group has power and autonomy and an important role in maintaining a well-functioning society. The youth, for example, call out conflicts within the group, usually caused by the adults, who provide the most sustenance, while the elderly reconcile conflicts as they arise. I don't point to the Mbuti or any other society in order to assert that we must copy them exactly. Obviously not. We live in different contexts, and the road we'll need to take to reach egalitarian ends will look different in many ways. But I introduced their example to indicate the possibility of gender and age egalitarianism in human society, and to provide inspiration for potential radical alternatives.
Capitalism doesn't let us do this. It takes a village. Let's take that statement literally. Start building your village. Start researching and finding ways to disrupt the current nuclear family structure in as many ways as possible. Everything that we've covered in this video is one reason that no matter the racial dynamics, we keep traumatizing our children. We keep failing and calling it childhood, when what we should really call it is rearing products for the state.
You have to be your biggest fan.
In conclusion, I'm gonna be perfectly honest, this was an emotional roller coaster of a video essay. Between writing the script, sharing some of my personal stories, hearing stories from other people, research, hearing stories about CPES. It was an emotional roller coaster and many triggers, but it was also incredibly healing and incredibly rewarding. I've grown so much as an individual through this process, as well as I have helped friends in my life process some of their own trauma and start to heal from that, have some of their own realizations, and I'm really excited to get working on some of the other projects I have planned, because bring more of the healing. I'll take more of the healing. I will. I don't mind. I will get triggered so I can step through the fire, so I can get into that healing, because the other side is so goddamn worth it and beautiful. So to wrap up the main points I would like people to remember from this video, CPS needs to be absolutely dismantled. Black communities need to consider giving space and acceptance to Black people who were raised by white parents. It's really time to rethink family in a more civil, humane, consensual, non-hierarchical, collectivist-based way. For the children. We are all suffering from the intersections of childhood trauma, trauma from capitalism, as well as trauma from the state. And so I hope that this video reached more than just people from the Black community, because the topics I was talking about are not specific to Black families, Black children, or white parents with Black children. Second to lastly, supporting Black mothers is better than kidnapping their children. Please check out my good friend's organization, Black Birthing Lives Matter. I will put links down in the description. Support Black doulas, support Black OBGYNs, support Black birthing lives and Black births and Black children and Black people. And my last and final point, which was my thesis, which I think I proved was accurate. Raising children in capitalism is child abuse. It's time to rethink existence. It's time to rethink living. It's time to rethink love. And it's time to rethink about what is really important. I'll see you guys in the next one. Yes, I know you're probably like, this bitch just talked for 7 hours, is she not done yet? But, hi. I just wanted to come back on screen because I filmed that conclusion like 6 weeks ago. I didn't feel like it was an accurate visual representation of what I've just been through. And I wanted to come on screen to personally shout out some people who were huge inspirations and a big part of this entire process. So, this video essay originally I had allotted 2 weeks and it was supposed to be 1 hour and a half. And it ended up being 9 weeks, 8 all-nighters. I can't remember how many scripts and rewrites and addendums. This was the original script. See, and this was the second draft. And when I added the clips I was gonna add in my addendums, and it was like, I don't know, I mean, it's like 14, 15 pages. This is my script as of today. This is also why there's not a copy of the script in the description. There was 4 wigs, over 18 outfit changes, so many goddamn tears, 1 sinus affection, 1 birthday, 2 spiritual witch ceremonies, hours and hours of therapeutic rage dancing, 2 dumpster dives to get part of the script that I accidentally threw away, and a slightly neglected friend group, and only 6 emergency community therapy sessions. And here is my magnum opus. Because this video essay was not only lots of research I did in the last 7 to 9 weeks, but also over a decade's worth of historical research, psychological research, current events, just a lot of research, I've decided that I am now a philosopher. Thank you. I'm also an artist, a historian, and a filmmaker, and I'm adding this in here because I want people to start claiming their motherfucking titles. You do not have to get a blessed piece of paper from the colonizers' systems and structures to be able to just give yourself a title. You just have to do the thing. And I mean this genuinely because a lot of the people that I watch, you guys don't just make video essays. You are making films. You are making documentaries. You are making content that is actually changing people's lives. And I so much thank you and appreciate you. And I hope that you guys will start claiming some of your titles, okay? You're a historian, you're a philosopher, whatever. Just have fun with it, okay? Because they're all made up anyways. Let's continue. No one is self-made. No one does anything alone. I am a communist and a collectivist. I'm just here to connect dots, combine others' concepts and ideas, and I hope to create new ideas and philosophies that we can use to propel ourselves to a more liberated future. But even though I may be a philosopher and historian, don't get me wrong, I can't make this content without everybody else's work. On top of the fact that there's literally like generations of people that had to create and invent so many different things that I needed to make this video essay. So just a quick shout out to them. Content creators that I spent a lot of time watching while I was making this video and that inspire me. Here we go. FD Signifier. You dope as fuck. Professor Flowers. I love you and hopefully we will be friends someday. Noah Sampson. You are doing white Jesus' work. Andrewism, you give me hope. Whenever I'm feeling hopeless, I go to Andrewism's page, and no matter what he's talking about, his voice alone gives me hope. But then he's also so intelligent and has just a wealth of information. So, thank you. Car, I hope your channel grows more and more and more. Thank you for your work and for your open intersectional spaces that you are creating on your channel. Bad Empanada, I hope you're my next best friend. I'm just gonna be blunt. I don't know. This may sound like a sappy fangirl fucking thing. I don't give a fuck, okay, Bad Empanada? I think you're dope. Foreign Man in a Foreign Land, you're fucking hilarious. Love your work. Keep doing your magic. Khadijah, and I'm not gonna say your last name because I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it right at the top of my head right now, and I do not want to fuck it up because I have nothing but the utmost respect. Thank you for your work. I binge watched so many of your videos while I was making this content. And then just a couple other white boys, John the Duncan, thank you. Just genuinely, authentically, thank you. Just for existing. And the only way that I got through this project is also Mark Ruble, who makes magic in the moment, and I've had on the background through most of my editing, and I wake up to him in the morning, and that's what gets me going. And I say this so that people hopefully see that this is what living collectively and existing is bringing all of our ideas and all of our content and art together to see new possibilities for the future. So, thank you, all of you, for your work. I would also like to thank my roommate and best friend who has been there for me on demand for this entire video essay, as well as my fiance, as well as Goddess Jux, who's another one of my good friends who has been on demand for Zoom therapy sessions. I wouldn't have made it through this and been able to make this content without three of you. I love you so very much. It goes to my heart. I also would like to thank my one-room studio in which all of this content was filmed, produced, directed, made. I would like to thank my right arm and pinky for just going numb from writing and editing and not actually falling off. Special thanks to Whiteout Pilot C2 pens, college rule notebooks, and clipboards. Shout out to my ADHD and my anxiety, okay? We did this, okay, bitch? We did this, okay? Thank you to Naps, and thank you to Nap Ministries on Instagram. You should go follow them for reminding me to take naps. And I want to give a special, huge thank you to Cannabis. You the real goat. Special thanks to a few other important people in my life, if they ever see this content. Nina, Shantae, Madame Faye, Kathy. So important to me and also to the work that I did in this content. And that's it, motherfuckers. Okay? Hopefully you enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe. Check out my Patreon, my PayPal, my Venmo, all of those Cash App things, they're down below. And I have to go, okay? Thank you. These long, intensive video essays only happening every couple of months. Make sure to hit the notification bell because I have other series of a little less production-intensive video essays that will be coming up. Okay, now roll the motherfucking credits. Roll the credits. My, I'm going to burn this as a sacrifice to my ancestors. Or maybe just get high and sleep for 2 days. Roll the motherfucking credits. And we're focusing. And I think... I don't know, do we need more lighting? Less lighting? I think we're okay.
As well as a constant with these white people. These white people.
The next terms I would like to define are Okay, we are still in section 2, history of stealing babies, clip 11.
I like this. Is that? Oh yeah.
Hi. I'm, well, I don't know really how I got here. I think I was manipulated. I was manipulated to come to this interview.